Joining us now, though, for a prediction on the ultimate finale is going to be Joachim Klement, who is an investment strategist at Liberum and has built an economic model that predicts, at least you claim, Joachim, predicts the outcome of the World Cup. And to give you your credit, you've done it successfully, 2014 and 2018. Talk to us about what your prediction is for this year. Are England going to do it? And what is behind this economic model?
Well, the good news for England fans is England is going to make it into the final.
And win?
No. The bad news is they're going to lose this one. They've been in one before, they won that, but this year's prediction from us is for Argentina to win. It is based on, as you mentioned, this economic model that is based on some economic factors that, quite frankly, I produced 8 years ago for the first time in a way to satirize economists' hubris in trying to predict absolutely everything. And then actually I was right twice in the last 2 World Cups in predicting the winner.
So it turns out that actually predicting the World Cup winner is easier than predicting inflation?
Definitely, it seems. At least this year it seems to be much, much easier. It points to a truth when it comes to World Cup, namely the fact that while there are a lot of upsets, and trust me, I've been sweating a lot after Argentina lost against Saudi Arabia in the opening match, there are some really important factors at play that make a team good. And they don't necessarily have to do with the individual players, but with the infrastructure in place.
So talk to us about that then. That is really interesting. I know you started this as a bit of a nod to economic forecasting and how fallible it can be. But what are the components that you've built into this model then? Yeah,
so there are essentially 4 components that are in the model. Number 1 is the temperature, the climatic conditions. You have countries where you can play football all year round are clearly at an advantage versus countries where it's too cold in winter or too hot in summer. Then you need a lot of people. The more people you have, the bigger the talent pool that you can select from, and the more likely it is that you will produce stellar players. And then the third question is basically what we use to is GDP per capita, the wealth of a country. If you are too poor, look at Nigeria and other African countries, they might have a massive talent pool, but not the money to put the infrastructure in place to actually develop these talents and become world-class players. And then fourth is a cultural phenomenon. Countries, particularly in Latin America, are much more football obsessed, and they have an advantage because that means more people are playing the game and you have more talents.
So it's a cultural aspect as well. I'm going to throw in a country that ticks at least 2 of those boxes, wealth and a large population, that is terrible at football, and that's China. They didn't even make it into the world. I can't remember the last time China has qualified. Massive fan base. They love the sport. They have their own teams. So what's going on there?
Yeah, it's indeed true. China and India are the 2 countries that should, on the face of it, do really, really well. The Indians have decided to play cricket, God knows why, and the Chinese, for some strange reason, have never really caught up on that. China is the big outlier in this kind of model to the negative, in terms of not being as successful as they should be, while there are other countries, and I particularly point out the Netherlands, a country that is relatively small, but has been incredibly successful at football over the years and decades.
So what are you going to do if your prediction is England-Argentina in the final, England ultimately lose, Argentina win with Messi at the helm? If that doesn't come to pass? What is your kind of what are you going to do? What is your reaction to that? Have you kind of made a bet within the office?
Yes. Well, I've participated in our office raffle, and we got our tickets attributed at random, and I got Ghana, so I'm out of the race already. But I've, in the note itself, actually claimed all the excuses that I can have. After all, I'm an economist with more than 20 years' experience. I'm good at excuses, and the number 1 excuse is, which makes this World Cup so much harder to predict, is the fact that it is in winter, not in summer. So it's in the middle of a season where some players are much more rested than they usually are when we play it in June or July.
It was interesting. So I was looking, there are other models, of course. I mean, and you're going to stick by yours because of the way you've built it. But there's the Alan Turing Institute. They're giving Brazil a 1 in 4 chance of winning. The UK, or England, I should say, 1 in 10 for England. That's the Alan Turing Institute. And then Lloyd's, they put together the collective insurable value of teams' players, and they predict England are going to win versus Brazil. in the final. And they got 2014 and 2018 right as well. Anything to say for those models?
I do understand their approach, and there's a lot of merit in them. I'm a bit cautious about using the collective value of the players because the Premier League has so much more money at its disposal and can pay so much more for players that it is a bit skewed in that respect. But there are different approaches. I, as an economist, used the macro approach. That has turned out to be rather better than I expected. To be honest, I'd be happy if the hype dies down a little bit and I for once get it wrong.
Well, let's hope you do, and let's hope England end up being victorious. What is easier to predict then? Is it the World Cup or is it the shape of these equity markets?
It's hard to say, to be honest, because I always thought equity markets are easier to predict than the World Cup, but it turns out that World Cups statistically are easier to predict because there are fewer upsets. But when it comes to the current market outlook, I would say I've got a lot of confidence in some aspects of it, but trying to forecast when this market is going to bottom is just as impossible as whether France will win against England or the other way around.